Hey, how's everybody doing? Hope you're having a beautiful day. Today, we're going to be getting into indirect reasoning. So, this is where actually it gets a bit fun, and as fun as scholastic logic can get. So, indirect reasoning is, you guessed it, not direct reasoning. So, we've been going through direct types of direct reasoning so far, trying to establish your thesis. But in indirect reasoning, you do two things. You do first, you take away objections, and then second, you establish propositions from which the thesis is inferred. And usually it's going to be most indirect reasoning is really just retorting your opponent's position. That's going to be the way that you go about it. First is going to be the reductio ad absurdum. This is what most people have heard of. Most people understand the reductio ad absurdum. You show that the denial of your thesis or the affirmation of your enemy's thesis leads to absurd consequences. And we can think of a lot of these. So you can argue that the denial of all morality leads to absurd consequences. So if somebody's arguing that there's no morality, goodness, and morals, they're actually all just something which is subjective, all truth is subjective, and all that stuff. And I'll ask them, well, if I don't know, bomb Taiwan, I don't know why I would bomb Taiwan, but if I bomb Taiwan or if I firebomb your house, would you be totally cool with that? Because it's something which is immoral. In your sort of opinion, it's something which is immoral, but I think it's completely moral to firebomb your house or to bomb Taiwan or something like that. And you're going to get a lot. You're going to be able to do this with a lot of different arguments. Another argument is going to be if you think about the abortion debates where people talk about, well, actually, it's not a person unless there's some sort of self reflective consciousness. Well, you can retort with a reductio ad absurdum and say, well, is it okay when you're sleeping if I come in and kill you because you don't have reflexive self consciousness when you're sleeping? So you actually cease to be a person when you're sleeping and then become a person again when you're awake. Is it okay if I knock you out first and then kill you because then you'll actually not have reflexive self consciousness, so I can kill you, and therefore you're not a person when you're knocked out, and a bunch of different things. Actually, also, if you pass, most people pass out before they die. So if I'm murdering you and you pass out and then die, am I only charged with some sort of lesser charge because I didn't kill a person? I attempted to kill a person, so I only got attempted murder. But actually, you passed out and then you died. When I killed you, you were passed out, but I was attempting to kill you when you were alive. So actually, I didn't commit murder here, and so on and so forth. You could do these all day long. And then a negative argument, and I kept this simple for a reason. Negative argument is on the principle of what is merely asserted is merely denied. So oftentimes you get people who will put forth wonderful arguments, but they don't prove any of their theses, I mean, any of their premises. They don't prove any of them. So they just, out of thin air, pull them out, assert them, and don't prove anything. So they say, well, actually, let's say you're in an online debate with an Orthodox guy, and the Orthodox guy says, well, the Orthodox Church is the true church and provides no uh, proof to this. You could say, well, I just merely deny the premise, and I deny the Orthodox is not the true church. There you go. Further, the instance is one of the most fun and one of the classical ways of argumentation. I'm sure with a lot of your parents, at least I know this is the way with my parents, and especially grandparents, is the way in which they like to prove their arguments is through examples. They love examples. Examples are very powerful. So you show an example against the person's thesis. And again, a lot of these are more rhetorical than anything. So if somebody argues that all history is unreliable, you respond with the historical fact that the sun set yesterday. If somebody says that all immorality is subjective, you reply with the example of, I don't know, murder or something like that. If somebody says that all truth is subjective, you reply with the instance of what they have just given, and so on and so forth. So, argumentum ad hominem. So, an argumentum ad hominem is not a fallacy. It is not a fallacy. That is a cringe myth that you learned in, I think it's like 11th grade English that you learn about logical fallacies. Argumentum ad hominem is not a fallacy. Actually, this was brought up pretty frequently in a lot of anti-modernist writers. The argumentum ad hominem is what the church would argue against the liberal states, is that since you guys are so big when it comes to a positive right of religious freedom, why don't you give us a positive right of religious freedom and stop oppressing the church? So they would, without accepting the principle of a positive right to religious freedom, would argue against those who did accept the principle in order that they may be consistent with their principles. So that is, or the example I give: if someone gets mad at another for committing a crime, yet does not believe in objective morality. So you can't get mad at me for committing murder because you don't believe in objective morality. So why shouldn't I commit murder? And then another one is an evade. So I this is my favorite method of argument: indirect argumentation. Rather than answering the person's syllogism that they put forth, you just point out all of those consequences and facts that they are unwilling to explain. So they give this long and elaborate argument, and then you don't even care about the long and elaborate argument. You just ask a bunch of questions about the stuff they don't want to explain. So the orthodox person gives a long and elaborate argument for the filioque, and then you bring up the fact, well, St. Augustine taught the filioque, and for you, individual fathers, not only the fathers collectively, but individually, are apodictic, what are called apodictic or necessary arguments. So, yeah, you've been debunked on this one. You're done. So you evade their syllogism, and then start pressing them on those issues they don't want to cover. This is a very good rhetorical method right here, is to just evade. And then another one, argumentum ad ignorantium. Ignorantium. It's a very interesting ending. And it shows that an opponent is unable to prove his point or answer objections. So with this one, you just show that the opponent is, as it appears, ignorant. So you keep asking them to prove to prove the various premises that they're using in their argument, or even to give a syllogism for their thesis, or maybe you just keep bringing up objections that you know they can't answer. You show the ignorance of your opponent. And then lastly, when it comes to these responding to objections, the most important thing to remember is to distinguish premises. So you can do indirect arguments all day, totally fine, in order to debunk your opponent. But the most important thing to do is you go to their argument, you find out exactly the sense in which everything is used, and then you distinguish. Because usually there's some sort of truth in what your opponent is saying. So your opponent might talk about, I don't know, arguing for the subjectivity of morality. And they'll talk about, for their example, different customs that are present in each nation, or different laws that are present in each nation. And you would distinguish. You would say, well, when it comes to the application of laws, the eternal law, or the application of objective morality, of course, there's going to be different customs or different ways in which we're applying the law. But when it comes to the essence of the moral law, we would deny that it's something which is subjective. So you have to in your argumentation against others, remember the heart and soul of a good disputer is going to be able to distinguish the premises which the opponent is bringing forward. Okay, thank you, and God bless.